listening to LOA Recon with the Good Vibe Coach Jeanette Ma, where we dissect the ins and outs and the art and science of conscious creation, all intended to amp up your manifesting game. Let's have some fun together. I was talking with someone recently about how we can make contrast be our best friend when we learn how to leverage it as an opportunity for realigning. Like when we recognize that we're thinking a thought that represents what we don't want, we recognize that, and we flip the thought around. We just go to the exact opposite and think about what we do want. When we get in the habit of that, it can make contrast serve us very well. In fact, I've got a business partner who likes to tell people that the reason I was so successful at building a coaching practice as quickly as I did was because I had a lot of fearful thoughts that I learned how to leverage. I used them as triggers or catalysts to remind myself what I did want. So whether it was a thought of something like, oh, this isn't going to work, you're going to have to get a job, I would use that, recognizing that thought as an opportunity to repeat, no, that's not what I'm creating. What I'm creating is I'm a brilliant coach in high demand. I also practiced this when it came to conjuring up perfect clients. I know a lot of coaches have experiences with clients that they talk with each other about how to manage because it's not much fun. I have not had a lot of those experiences simply because I got so dialed in on perfect clients. And part of the way that I did that was by very early on noticing whenever I found myself thinking about what I didn't want to experience in a client, I would use that as my trigger to think about what I did want. In fact, what I did was print up a perfect client list, and I posted it on my board, on my office wall. And this was, again, early on in building my business, but every time I would catch myself thinking something negative about a client, and usually it was more thinking something negative about myself, that they either wouldn't want to pay my rates or they weren't getting what they wanted out of the coaching or something along the lines that was not nearly at all what I wanted to experience or what I wanted them to experience. So when I found myself entertaining a thought along those lines, I had it in writing, right? So I just had to turn my head and I would read my list. That's how I turned my attention over to what I did want and off of what I didn't want. In fact, I got into such a habit of that I'd be on the phone with other coaches who would be talking about what they didn't want, and I would find myself turning my head to reread my list. I mean, it was their thought, it was their experience, but I was so trained that any negative thought about clients was my instant trigger to go revisit my perfect clients, that I found myself doing it in my head whenever I'd be talking with a colleague who was experiencing contrast. In fact, even years later, after I didn't have my perfect client list on my wall anymore, because, for a while that was the majority of my business, one-on-one coach sessions. Once it wasn't, I didn't have that list on my board anymore, but I was so well trained to redirect my attention that even when a negative thought would pop up, I would turn my head just out of habit to look at the list that wasn't even there anymore. That's how, I don't want to say obsessed, I'll say committed. That's how committed I was to not letting those negative thoughts linger, because I know I'm going to get whatever I'm thinking about. And if I don't want to have these negative experiences with clients or with boyfriends or with bosses or with neighbors or whatever I didn't want, when I learn how to use that contrast as an instruction to think about what I do want, that's how life gets even better in a hurry. It's a powerful practice, you guys. If it isn't one that you have already engaged, I would highly recommend it. I think it helps quite a bit when we make it easy for ourselves to recall what we want. Because if we're mired in contrast, that can be kind of challenging to conjure it up on the spot. That's why I put it in writing, so it was easy to get to. It didn't take me 10 minutes to remind myself. It was right there in writing. But however you find a way to redirect your attention, that's where the magic is. And when we use contrast this way, it really will become your best friend in a hurry, because every negative thought is just an opportunity to give the universe an instruction for what you really do want. Magic happens when we do it. Can't wait for you to practice it too. Thanks for listening, and happy manifesting.